last night we had the 7th different Stanley Cup champion in 8 years. The Florida Panthers. The NBA has now had 6 different champions in 6 years.
Nice.
Which I believe
hasn't happened since the 70s, if that even happened back then.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Because, I know for sure that at some time recently, like the 70s came up as like, wow, this is the first time that blank has happened since.
I believe that's right.
Real quick. So I'm going back to 1980. So the Lakers. Okay, never mind. I'll go to 78. The Supersonics won, the Blazers, the Suns, the Warriors, the Bucks, the Lakers, and then the Bucks. So, I mean, that was 6 in 6 years, I believe, if I just did my math right. All right. So this is the first time that's happened since the early 70s.
And in Major League Baseball, we've had 9 different champions in the last 10 years. And the question is, are we in a golden age of parity? Parity, not parity. Parity. And yeah, when you look at those types of numbers, absolutely. I mean, the NBA, this hasn't happened in almost 50 years. NHL, I'm not sure what the time frame is here.
Gosh, I feel like it's a lot of like dynasties or like mini dynasties type franchises in my lifetime.
I would have to think this is the most parity we've had in Major League Baseball.
Oh, man.
In many, many years.
Well, especially, too, like, you know, I remember when I was growing up and the Yankees were in the midst of their run. And then for a while, it just seemed like you had to be from one of those big markets. You had to have an insane payroll. And that was the only way to win. And meanwhile, like the team that pays the most money right now, it's the Dodgers, and they only have one World Series to show for it. And that was the COVID title. It wasn't even like a traditional World Series.
Yeah, so we have had a lot of different teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess you can say, is this the golden age of parity? And I think the answer to that is obviously yes, for all of these to be happening at the exact same time. My question is this: is that good? Are we satisfied with that?
Well, yeah, I would ask you, from which perspective are you asking the question? Are you asking it from, like, if you are
does it make it more enjoyable to watch these sports every year knowing that
it feels wide open?
It feels wide open.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, you would think it's like awesome, right? Because you enter a season and you think that your team, if you have its favorite team, you think like, wow, I have a chance. My team has a chance to win a championship. And I think I feel like that's the backbone that the NFL has been able to live off of for so many years, where I think the 99 Rams are perhaps the best example of them all. Truly worst to first. They win the Super Bowl. It's pretty cool to enter a season and think that your team with a break or two and, being good can win a championship. I know what one of the negatives, though, and something that you have talked about a lot, is having that team to chase, right? Like, for the longest time in the NFL is the Patriots. Obviously, right now it's the Chiefs, and they will now be the team that you compare yourself to. If you beat them in the regular season, huge win. It is a season-defining win, perhaps, for your franchise. Certainly, if you beat them in the playoffs, ding dong, the witch is dead. It's kind of how it feels. Every Patriots playoff loss felt that way. Oh my gosh, that team just beat the Patriots. Could they win the Super Bowl? Sometimes they beat them in the Super Bowl, and they literally would win the Super Bowl. So I understand it from both perspectives. I think it's interesting, mainly from the NBA view, like, just to start there, because the early days of this show was built off of like the Warriors run and people saying, I'm so sick of Warriors caps. That's what it was every single year. For 4 years, that was the same championship series. And there would be people who would say, man, I really want to see something else. And now they're getting that. And from the ratings perspective, this has been bad. And then for a variety of reasons. I don't think it's just because of parity, but I think there's something to be said for that. For Lakers Celtics, for Michael Jordan's Bulls, for Shaq and Kobe, like those types of the Warriors. I think those types of runs, they're storylines that get told over years and years. And so when they make it to the championship series, whether they win or lose is besides the point. It's that the characters. You've seen them before.
I think we like the idea of parity. We don't like parity. We like the idea of it. The idea that it's everyone is equal and everyone has a chance. But when it actually comes down to the end and you want to see the story, you want to see familiar characters, you want to see familiar storylines, you want to see the ability for teams to either get revenge or continue their dynasty, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we like the idea of it. but when it actually happens, we're like, eh. And the surprising thing is, you had Dallas and Boston. Those are two major markets.
I know.
Yeah, but you did have a gold star franchise, a legendary franchise that people either love to watch or love to watch lose.
Mm-hmm.
And the ratings were down. Harder to speak to that to hockey because, hockey fans are hockey fans. There's not that team that's going to bring in, or that story that's just going to bring in a lot of casuals.
I know.
It's just, it is what it is.
It's a huge market, right?
And
the Rangers showed up again, but even they, I feel like, have a ceiling.
Sure they do. And with baseball, strangely, we haven't had the Yankees for quite some time. And I think that has hurt.
I do too.
I think that has hurt, that this has been the longest drought in 50 years.
That's
over
wild.
50 years that the Yankees have had without winning a World Series.
What were you going to say, Nick?
I say, speaking kind of for myself, but from other people that I've seen say this, even in Formula One, just with the dominance of Max Verstappen, and before Max Verstappen and Red Bull, Mercedes, that forced a lot of people to kind of lose interest in Formula One.
So it was the opposite in Formula One than it seems to be in some of the team sports.
I think parity is better for sure in Formula One is technically a team sport, technically. But I think parity works better in Formula One, but there has to be some kind of happy medium just with everybody, where there's maybe a dominant team or something for 3 years, and then it can get mixed up after that.
Josh,
the difference though is with sports like that is Verstappen was winning every race. At least, over the course of a season, the Celtics didn't win every game. Mm-hmm. But it just, when it came down to the end,
they did that.
Yeah. It was the same thing. But but your point is still
taken. So let's go to a different individual sport. And this one truly doesn't have teams, and that's golf. Golf's heyday, now, it was partly because of a guy like him. He was the singular force. Mm-hmm. But the viewership would increase when he was dominating. Like, it wasn't that wild. Like, the Masters, the 97 Masters is still like the gold standard for viewership, and he won that one by 1 million strokes.
But I mean,
there's a lot to it.
It was more about him than it was about his golf.
Sure, but even other tournaments that he would dominate, people couldn't turn away. In terms of bringing in casuals. Josh says all this parity across other sports just speaks to the greatness of Mahomes. It really, not to just make this about him, but it is wild when you see all these sports where it does, like, there's a part of me, John, that just wonders are we living in a very particular moment in time where, whether it's analytics or just things like that, we have more information, we being the collective, us as fans, us as media, us in the front office, right? So we have more information. We have more ways to figure out how to be good. The edges are smaller and smaller than they have ever been before. And so I wonder if it's that, if it's just the wealth has, and by wealth, I mean the talent level, it's spread out so much. It's pretty fascinating how we live in this era where you combine those three sports, and that's 20 something years, and you only have one team that's won two, and that was baseball. And so who is the team in the last 10 World Series that has won twice? I don't even know who that team would be. I don't think it's the Red Sox. I think we're outside of the Red Sox window. I don't think it'd be the Giants. We're out of the Giants window. Who would that be?
The
Astros. Astros won twice.
Astros and 17.
So think about that. Astros are the only team that's won twice across those sports in a combined 20
but
something
those
season.
that was the first time ever.
Correct.
Franchise championship. Correct. So it almost doesn't count.
Jed writes, John is right about the idea of parity. Like March Madness, everyone says they love the Cinderellas, but when it gets closer to the final game, people want to see the names and the stars. 100%. Yeah, March Madness, people love the upsets in the first and second round.
Sure.
When they get to the Final Four, they want the one that we had a couple years ago when it was Kansas, North Carolina, Duke, and Villanova. They want recognizable brands. In college sports, it's brands, right? It's in football, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Notre Dame.
My brand.
I just mentioned the college basketball teams. In pro sports, though, it is, and I think the Celtics perhaps are a great example of this. It's not so much the franchise, it's the characters. It's Peyton Manning. It's Tom Brady.
Sure.
It's now Patrick Mahomes. Mustache Adam says, I think people like parity from the perspective of having a dominant team or teams challenged every year by a different contender that breaks up the monotony of the same team or two teams each year vying for the title. Yeah, I think the best of all worlds is like the team that kind of owns that moment, making it to the last level. And then them, if they win again, they win again. But if they lose, again, it just feels more monumental. the Warriors when they were on that run. That Cavs title, it feels more monumental than it would otherwise because it came in the stretch of the Warriors winning all these titles. The Chiefs, and the same thing with the Patriots. It's going to be the same thing with the Chiefs. Non-Chief Super Bowl wins over the next decade, as long as Mahomes is there, are going to seem like, wow, they were able to win one, just like teams you can talk about it, teams in the 80s. The 49ers own that decade, but there are a few teams in there that it's like, whoa, they beat the 49ers. It means a whole lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And I think it would only help baseball if the Yankees were up there. I know we've had the Dodgers winning all these divisions and being on all these playoffs, but they've only won one World Series.
Just one.
So far.
And no offense, Dodgers, but in my book, you rise to that level. I can't stand you, but it's easier to hate the Yankees than it is to hate anybody else.
Sure.
Because they just have that historical greatness and aura about them.
The vibe. That
you don't get from anyone else. And to have that would certainly help, I think, Major League Baseball. The thing is, unless you are, and again, hockey's a little different because, there's not as many casuals that come to the party. But it used to be that it was the Canadiens.
Mm-hmm.
When they would be, it would be like, oh, that's the team that everybody hates. But it's been so long since they've been that relevant that they've kind of lost some of that luster. In the NBA, it's always Lakers Celtics, which is why, again, it's strange that this year it was meh because you had the Celtics.
Yeah.
So you would have thought you had a lot of people there either rooting for the Celtics or going anybody but the Celtics. But it didn't happen.
Different conversation for a different day, but I really do wonder if there's something to be said about the style in which basketball is played right now that people are just not latching onto, where it's just 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. I think that there might be something to that. Adam texts into the show, 402-951-1620. Says, I think it matters whether you are a diehard fan of the sport or a casual fan. For example, I'm a diehard college football fan. I love parity in college football. Casual fans, though, probably don't. They don't tune in if it isn't Bama, Ohio State, etc. in the championship. I'd say I'm a casual fan of most pro sports. So I hate parity. I need to see the same name brand teams to be interested. So I think it comes down to your level of fandom for the specific sport. That defines them if you're for parity or not. I'm a casual Major League Baseball fan. I'm way more inclined to watch a Yankees-Dodgers World Series than I am to watch a Rays-Diamondbacks World Series. I know that I feel that way for football, or for not football, for baseball. Like last year, I was not interested in that World Series at all. But yeah, if you gave me Dodgers, Yankees, you give me Cubs, Red Sox, sign me the F up, man. Like that sounds awesome.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, with me, I like that Alabama has begat Georgia. I like.
Yeah, you like having that team to chase.
I like having that team to chase because then it feels like you've accomplished something when you've beaten them.
So do you feel like these titles, I don't want to say lesser, but it just is different when there's not the singular force where it's just team.
And listen, it's still an accomplishment.
Obviously, yeah.
You win a title, you win a title. But I don't know. It's kind of the boxing / wrestling mentality where you have the champion who is the champion until he's not.
Yeah.
And it even though team sports don't work the way of, a heavyweight championship, there is that same sentiment of you feel like you've accomplished. When you beat the Patriots, it felt like you accomplished something more. Whoever beats the Chiefs,
oh my gosh,
it's going to feel like something more because you dethroned him.
John, Joe Burrow is still dining off of beating them in the AFC Championship game. Think of that. The guy hasn't won a Super Bowl, but we still are like, watch out for Joe Burrow when he comes back from this injury because he beat them in the playoffs. He is the only non-Tom Brady quarterback to do so.
Well, I think even the Lions beating Chiefs week 1 last year set the tone for their whole season.
100% did. It was like, whoa, we got to take them seriously now the rest of the year.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, whether it was them, whether it was the Patriots before them, especially in a sport like football with so few games, those wins are monumental. And I mean, I know we've talked about it before, but like in the Nick Saban era, Alabama losing was an event. Like you can remember some of the game. Sure. Tennessee beats them a couple years ago and they stormed the field and it's like, whoa, they beat Alabama. It means, not to say it means more because it's the SEC, but it means more when you beat those types of programs, those types of franchises. Jed says, even though the Bulls dominated the 90s, you could say there was a form of parity because they beat 5 different teams. Yeah, that's funny. The Bulls were always there. The Jazz were the only team that showed up to play them twice. Otherwise, it was Lakers, it was Blazers, it was Suns.
And you don't have to have the same
Sonics.
2 teams all the time, but it's nice to have the team.
Yeah.
It's nice to have the team.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you're chasing something.
It definitely does. Nate says, do you think people wanted to see TCU in the football playoffs last year? I mean, in the playoffs, I don't know. I mean, they got in over Bama, so people were probably excited about them getting in over Alabama. When they beat Michigan, it was funny, but then it gave us a horrible title.
Well, the other thing too is, and the other dynamic that exists with the SEC, and you don't, or with college football, and you don't get this in most other sports, is you have the SEC dynamic.
Definitely.
So it could have been Auburn, it could have been LSU, it could have been Vanderbilt, because they got the SEC brand.
Yeah.
That's something for people either to root for or against.
Yeah.
You don't have that, with, oh man, I can't root for the Diamondbacks because I hate the National League.
Yeah, at least not anymore. Maybe when you were growing up, but
the Diamondbacks just annoy me.
Wow.
Not a big fan of snakes.
No, actually, I'm basically Indiana
I
Jones.
don't like spiders and snakes.
Indiana Jones would also hate the Diamondbacks, John.
Nice.
Yeah, that's true. They would.
And that guy from Jackass.
I wonder what Indiana Jones's baseball team was.
Where's Indiana Jones from?
Oh, that's a good question.
Dumb debates.
I'm not sure.
I'll look it up.
I bet Indiana, you know what? Sad to say, I bet Indiana Jones was a Cardinal fan.
Oh, no. Do you think that he was...
No,
You don't think
not
he'd be a Cubs
problematic.
fan?
He actually fought the Nazis.